Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, PhD. And this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving women leaders. And we talk about leadership purpose and its importance for you. I am a college professor, and when I am not doing that, I am speaking, writing, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women leaders how to find, and not only find, but how to stay in alignment with their leadership purpose so they can make a meaningful difference right there in their career, leadership, or business. Okay, let's dive in. I remember being about 7 years old and sitting on the front porch of my house in Connecticut where I grew up. I grew up living in a house that my parents owned. It was a big 3-family house, but on the outside, it could look like one big house. But inside, there were 3 separate apartments. So we lived on the first floor and we had family and cousins on the second and third floors. And, we just go in and out of each other's apartment, just anytime we wanted to, in and out, kind of living as one big family. So anyway, one day in the summer when school was out, it was a nice sunny day. And I was sitting on the porch, just thinking and having some quiet to myself. And I could hear the kids inside playing. There was a bunch of us, my sister, brother, and cousins. I don't know, maybe about 8 of us. So the kids were inside playing and laughing. And then I can hear that they were starting to come outside onto the porch where I was. And I heard my father say to them, "Don't go out there and bother Robin. She's out there contemplating the meaning of life." And, he thought that was so funny. And so he laughed, they laughed. And when I heard this, I felt embarrassed. I felt, weird, a bit different because here I am outside, just sitting out on the porch and not doing what the other kids were doing, playing inside. And so I felt weird about that. But now as an adult, looking back, I think about that experience and I remember that I was thinking about the big questions of life. And I did need time away to just think and reflect on those things. And so who knew? My father was right. I was out there contemplating the meaning of life. And so I think this is a very telling story about who I am today. But I share the story not just for me, but for you to think about your own. But before we get to that, let me say a little more about what I learned from my reflection on this story. It really is a representation of who I was then and who I am now. This story helps me understand a part of who I am. Even at that young age, I was wondering about big questions of life and, in essence, meaning. And I needed time to think about those things. And so I took time away to take time to reflect and think. And it kind of amuses me now, because I didn't realize it then, that questions of meaning were important to me at 7 years old. And fast forward years later, I ended up getting a PhD and studying how people make meaning in their lives. And now I'm doing all this work on helping other people kind of find meaning and purpose. So I'm amused by that and how that story helped me understand or put another piece of that puzzle together. Okay, so now that's my story. Now I want to encourage you to think about your own. Think about a time in your life when you have a positive memory in your early life. This is what I want to encourage you to do, to think about that, right? And to reflect on it, because it could help you understand who you are today. You might see some similarities from your early life to your life now, the way I did. Now, I get this kind of thinking from a social psychologist named Dan McAdams. He's a professor at Northwestern University, and he wrote a book. Well, he wrote many books, but the one I'm referring to is called The Stories We Live By. And he says, understanding our stories and parts of our stories in particular helps us to have more meaning. It gives us meaning about who we are, which leads to our purpose. And I found that to be true, not only in this one story that I shared with you, but thinking about other stories in my life. Now, Dan McAdams, he does a larger work on your whole life story. And his work goes in that direction. My work tries to point you in the direction of meaning, which then you could use in your leadership, but also your leadership purpose. Now, Dan McAdams says, look at specific moments that stand out for some reason. So think about moments in your life rather than think about, for example, that year you went to summer camp. You don't want to think about the whole summer. You kind of want to narrow it down to particular moments. Like if that were me at summer camp, I probably have some moment where I was sitting under some tree somewhere away from the kids, contemplating the meaning of life. So think of particular stories within stories, moments. I refer to those moments as positive, pivotal moments. Now, the reason why I say positive, because I'm encouraging you to think about moments that were pleasant. You have fond memories about them. It could be stories that your family told about you or that you actually remember yourself. But when you think about them, they might make you laugh, or at least they make you smile. They're pleasant, fond memories. And I know many of us have memories that are painful or traumatic, but that will lead us away from what we're trying to get at here. There's a time and a place for that. And so I want to acknowledge that. But this is just a different way of looking at getting to this gateway of meaning. So think of a story that someone shared with you about you, or a story from your own memory from your early life, and take some time to just think about it. Now, this idea of just taking time to think about it is not something we get to do all the time. I know we're so busy, especially these days. Just the days are so filled with work and life that we don't really have time or think about taking time to just step back and reflect. And so here's your opportunity now. While you're doing this, hey, who knows? A story might come to you right now, today, or it might come to you later on, or sometime in the coming days. If you just say, recall a positive memory, a moment, what I'm calling a positive pivotal moment. It could be something that you felt makes you different, like in the case of my story, or it could be something that you always knew that was a part of you and you're still doing that now. I just encourage you to take some time to reflect on it, because thinking about it in this way can give you insight, because you're doing it in an intentional way and connecting the dots on what was meaningful to you in your early life and what could be meaningful to you now in your adult life these years later. So positive, pivotal moments. What's one of yours? Take some time and think about it and let me know how it goes. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Robin signing off. See you next time.